This is a story about women, a bloody court drama that spanned a century and entangled 9 empresses and 7 empress dowagers. And this is a story about the twilight of an empire, an absurd tug of war that brought a mighty 200-year-old dynasty to a sudden and glorious end. The story originates during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han, in a poor, remote county called Zhao, where the modern capital of Beijing now stands, lived a commoner widow named Wang Ren. After her husband's death, she remarried a peasant from a small neighboring fiefdom. This fiefdom was nothing grand. It was a tiny territory carved out of a king's land by imperial decree. And the widow's new husband wasn't even an official. He was merely a retainer to one of the marquis's non-heir sons. The widow and her second husband had 3 children, 2 sons, and a daughter named Wang. When the girl was 8 or 9, the young nobleman her father served took notice of her. He offered to raise and educate her in his own household. The family, dependent on his patronage, had no choice but to agree. From then on, Wang lived in the nobleman's manor, returning home only to collect her winter and summer clothes. For 4 or 5 years, life seemed tranquil. Then, one day, Wang ran home in terror, begging her mother for help. "The young lord is going to sell me to a merchant from Han to be a dancer." The panicked mother fled with her daughter. But the nobleman, along with Wang own father, pursued them relentlessly in a horse-drawn carriage. Cornered, the mother surrendered her daughter, screaming at the nobleman, "I sent my daughter to you in good faith, not for a single coin. We are not selling her. Why are you selling her to someone else?" The young lord denied everything. "It's all a misunderstanding." Nothing of the sort. But just a few days later, as a merchant's caravan passed by, Wang desperate cries echoed from one of the carts, "I've been sold. They're taking me to a place called Liuxiu." Her parents raced to Liuxiu and found their daughter, weeping in despair. The mother vowed to go to the authorities, but Wang already resigned to her fate, pleaded with her. "How can you win against a nobleman's house?" "Let it be. The world is vast. I will find a way to live." Still, her mother wouldn't give up. She and her husband followed the caravan. At night, the mother would sleep beside her daughter and the other purchased girls. They followed until their money ran out. Desperate, she left her husband to watch over Wang and rushed home to raise more funds. But she had barely returned when her husband came back, defeated. "The moment you left, the caravan set off again. I had no money to follow." We don't know how the widow cursed her husband's weakness. We don't know how, in the long years that followed, she ached for her lost daughter. All we know is this: she never saw her daughter again. Until 20 years later. Her husband was dead. Her sons were grown and married. The widow was now an old woman. Then one day, the county governor, accompanied by a grand entourage and 2 high-ranking officials from the capital, arrived in her humble village. They asked if she once had a daughter named Wang, who was sold to a merchant from Han Dynasty. In the crowd, she spotted the wife of that same merchant. A flame, extinguished for decades, reignited in her heart. Yes, I had a daughter named Wang. They took her 20 years ago. Have you found her? Is she well?" The governor looked at her, then pointed to the 2 officials. "These men are emissaries from the imperial chancellor's office. They have come all the way from the capital, Chang'an, just for you. You and your sons are to come to the capital, today." A spacious ox cart was brought forward. Confused, the old woman pleaded, "I only want my daughter. Why am I going to Chang'an? Is someone waiting for me?" The governor paused, took a deep breath, and said, "Ma'am, please get in the cart. The Son of Heaven, the Emperor himself, is waiting for you in Chang'an." On the long journey of over 1,000 kilometers, the old woman finally learned of her daughter's incredible fate. After being sold, Wang talent as a singer and dancer had flourished. She was purchased by the Crown Prince's household. There, she caught the eye of the Crown Prince's eldest son, the Emperor's grandson. She became his concubine and bore him a son, the Emperor's great-grandson. Just as her life had turned, disaster struck. The Crown Prince's family was implicated in a treason plot. The Crown Prince, his wife, his son, and Wang herself were all executed. Only the great-grandson, still an infant, survived. He was thrown into prison, left to die. 20 years later, that same great-grandson, the widow's own grandson, was now the emperor on the dragon throne. After confirming his grandmother's identity, the emperor bestowed upon her a fiefdom of 12,000 households. Her two sons, his own uncles, were both made full marquises. And just like that, this peasant family from a remote, impoverished county, the first house of Wang, had entered the highest echelons of power in the Han Empire. The same year the first Wang clan was ennobled, the emperor's 7-year-old son was named crown prince. But his mother, the emperor's first wife, Empress Chu, had been poisoned and murdered 5 years earlier by the family of the powerful regent, Guang, who then placed his own daughter on the throne as the new empress. The naming of a new crown prince enraged the Huo clan. They repeatedly tried to poison the boy but failed. The following year, the emperor, having waited and planned for years, struck with lightning speed. The entire treasonous Huo clan was annihilated, and their empress was deposed. The throne of the empress was vacant. To ensure his son's safety, the emperor carefully selected a new empress to be his adoptive mother, a consort from a commoner family whom he had known since his youth. She was humble, cautious, kind, and most importantly, she had no children of her own. As a formality, or perhaps compensation, the emperor made her father a marquise. This new empress was also named Wang, and so began the second great clan of this story, the House of Wang of Jingzhou. After purging the remnants of the Huo clan, the emperor lavished honors upon the family of his first murdered wife. Empress Chu's father and 2 uncles were all made marquises. One would later become Grand Marshal for his military achievements, another the commander of the Empress's palace guard. This was the House of Shu. The emperor's gratitude also extended to his paternal grandmother's family. Unlike his maternal grandmother, his paternal grandmother, Lady Shai, was an officially recognized concubine of the former crown prince. She too had been killed in the purge. But a story was told that she had adored her infant grandson. She had tied a small, precious mirror, a tribute from the kingdom of Shendu, modern-day India, to his swaddling clothes for protection. Miraculously, that mirror stayed with him throughout his years in prison, becoming his only tangible link to the family he never knew. Perhaps it is just a legend, but the history is real. After being released from prison at the age of 5, the orphan boy was sent to be raised by his grandmother's family, the Shiz. So, once he held power, he repaid them handsomely. The House of Shi produced 4 marquises and a grand marshal. And so, we have the board. 2 houses of Wang, the House of Shu, and the House of Shi. 4 great clans, all raised from obscurity by an orphan emperor who had grown up in a prison cell. He needed a family, a power base of his own. He placed his trust in them, appointing them to the highest positions in the military and the court. They were to be his arms and his shield, offering absolute loyalty in exchange for generations of wealth and power. So everything would proceed according to his perfect plan, right? No. As it turns out, this seemingly perfect arrangement may have planted the very seeds of disaster and ruin. The crown prince grew up. He fell in love with a concubine of his own, Lady Sima, but she fell ill and died. On her deathbed, she whispered that she had been cursed by other jealous consorts. This accusation, a near-perfect echo of what his own mother, Empress Chu, had said before her death, struck a raw nerve. Though there was no evidence, he was consumed by paranoia and refused to touch any other woman in his household. His adoptive mother, the childless Empress Wang, was frantic. At the emperor's behest, she selected 5 of her most beautiful and talented ladies-in-waiting and insisted the crown prince choose one. He refused, but he could not defy the woman who had raised him for 20 years, nor could he disobey the emperor. So he gestured dismissively at the woman standing closest to him. Her, then. And yet this woman, chosen with a flick of the wrist, gave birth to the emperor's only grandson just 1 year later. The overjoyed emperor personally named the child grandson of the heir. The court took notice. The lady-in-waiting, once a nobody, was now the crown princess. 3 years later, the emperor died. The crown prince ascended the throne, and the crown princess became the new empress. Her name was Wang Zhengjun, and her father was made a marquise. This was the 3rd great clan of our story, the House of Wang of Yuancheng, But a casual gesture and a lucky birth do not create love. The new emperor's heart was not with Empress Wang Zhengjun. She understood this, and with remarkable political savvy, she accepted her role as a wife in name only, quietly and flawlessly playing the part of the empress. The emperor's heart belonged to consort Fu. Once a lady-in-waiting herself, she had captured his heart when he was still the crown prince. After he ascended the throne, he first made her a high-ranking consort. But feeling that wasn't enough, he created a new, unprecedented title, Zhao Yi, second only to the empress, and granted it to his two favorite women, consort Fu and consort Feng. So, a loveless empress as the official head of the court, while two favored consorts share the emperor's bed? Life is never so simple. Soon, new princes were born. Consort Fu had a son, consort Feng had a son, and Wang Zhengjun's only advantage vanished. The emperor was now seriously considering replacing both the crown prince and the empress. And yet, the very same grandson who had been so doted upon by the great Emperor Xuan was now revealing a fatal flaw, a growing weakness for wine and women. And his father, the new emperor, was deeply displeased. Wang Zhengjun's position was hanging by a thread. And in that precarious moment, another clan intervened. The crown prince's official tutor was Shi Dan, the third-generation marquis of the House of Shui. He had been a companion to the emperor since their youth. His word on the matter of succession carried immense weight. On one occasion, the emperor, delighted to find that consort Fu's son shared his own talent for music, praised the boy lavishly. Shi Dan calmly interjected, "True scholarship and the skill of playing an instrument are two different abilities. The crown prince excels at the former. If the latter were so important, we might as well appoint lute players as our chancellors." A few years later, the final test came. The emperor was dying. In his delirium, he refused to see the empress or the crown prince. At his side were only consort Fu and her young son. It was whispered that he was already asking his ministers about the legal process for changing the succession. At the critical moment, Shi Dan, using his privilege as an intimate courtier, forced his way into the inner palace. He burst into the emperor's bedchamber, fell to his knees, and began to weep. "The court is rife with rumors that you intend to replace the crown prince," he cried. "If this is true, the high ministers will all fight it to the death. I have come to ask you directly. If you mean to depose him, then please, grant me death first." The emperor, a man known for his soft heart, was taken aback by such fierce loyalty and moved by his old friend's tears. He sighed. "The empress is humble and cautious, and the crown prince was favored by my late father. How could I possibly replace him?" Hearing this, Shi Dan immediately stood up and declared loudly, "Since your majesty has no such intention, then I must have been misled by rumors. I beg your punishment." The emperor, weary and trapped, had no choice. "My life is near its end," he said. "The crown prince and the empire are in your hands." Shortly after, the emperor died. The former grandson of the heir became Emperor Cheng. Wang Zhengjun became the Empress Dowager. Shi Dan was rewarded with a greater title and immense wealth. The House of Shui, since taking in the Orphan emperor, had now produced 4 marquises and a dozen high officials. Until, that is, Wang Zhengjun's nephew stripped them of everything. As for consort Fu, she and her son were exiled from the capital, sent away to his remote fiefdom. So, was this a victory for the allied houses of Wang and Shui? As it turned out, Emperor Yuan had judged his son perfectly, just as his own father had judged him. Both had seen that their heirs were unfit to rule, yet neither had made the difficult decision to replace them. In the Han Dynasty, replacing an heir was a politically explosive process. Of the 5 heirs born to empresses so far, 2 had been deposed, and the other 3 had narrowly escaped the same fate. So, to protect themselves, heirs often formed political alliances with powerful families through marriage. And in the Han system, the most powerful families were the imperial relatives, the clans of the empresses and consorts. This led to a uniquely Han characteristic, a preference for marriage among close relatives. Emperor Cheng's marriage was a product of this system. His first wife, Empress Chu, yes, from the House of Shu, was the daughter of his grandmother, Empress Chu's cousin. So, in terms of blood relation, what does that make her? Essentially, she was a cousin to his father. and this was far from the most tangled marriage in the Han imperial family. Whether due to the close kinship or not, Empress Shu suffered 2 miscarriages. But no matter. The emperor was still in his 20s. He had plenty of time. Right? The historical records mention another of his favored consorts, Ban Jieyu, also suffering a miscarriage. But such records would soon cease. Because the terminators of the imperial bloodline, the most infamous sister act in Chinese history, had arrived at the palace. A mysterious children's rhyme began to spread through the capital. A swallow with a glistening tail. Master Zhang often met. The wooden gate with its bronze-green root. The swallow flies in, pecks the imperial sun. The imperial sun dies, the swallow pecks the arrow. Let's decipher this. Master Zhang often met was an open secret. Emperor Cheng had a male favorite, Zhang Fang, who was also his cousin. They were inseparable, sharing a carriage by day and a bed by night. The wooden gate was a metaphor for the magnificent imperial palace. The swallow flies in. Shortly after taking the throne, Emperor Cheng, often led by Zhang Fang, would sneak out of the palace in disguise. One of his favorite haunts was the mansion of his sister, the princess. And it was there, one night, that he saw a new dancing girl from Handan and was utterly captivated. Yes, another girl from Handan, the same city that had produced the emperor's own great-grandmother. Handan was a factory for producing souls of desire, spirits of temptation. And this dancer was its masterpiece. She performed a new, astonishingly light and ethereal dance, almost like ballet, a radical departure from traditional Chinese forms. She was a flame of pure desire, illuminating the night. We don't know what the emperor thought in that moment of infatuation. Perhaps he recalled the ancient poem, "In the north there is a fair lady whose single glance topples a city and whose second glance topples an empire." More likely it was just a gulp and a single primal thought. "I want her." "She's yours," the princess said. She sent the girl to the palace and told the emperor her name, Zhao Feiyan. Feiyan means flying swallow. The swallow had flown in. At this moment, Empress Dowager Wang Zhengjun, who should have been in command of the palace, was consumed by power struggles at court. She had elevated her own house of Wang of Yuancheng, making 5 of her brothers marquises and her eldest brother, Wang Feng, the supreme grand marshal. This inevitably caused a backlash from the other great clans. The strongest challenge came from the first house of Wang from Zhao and the house of Shu. Wang Zhengjun and her brother moved ruthlessly. First, they took down the chancellor, a member of the first Wang clan, forcing the emperor to dismiss him over a trivial family matter. The disgraced chancellor died 3 days later, vomiting blood. The first house of Wang was out. Next came the house of Shu, which had produced 2 empresses. Wang Zhengjun's faction first forced the current grand marshal from the Shu clan to retire, then launched an attack on Empress Shu herself. Courtiers accused her of extravagance in a time of natural disasters. Unaware of the danger, the empress wrote a long, defiant letter to the emperor, arguing that the palace budget was justified. The emperor, who now had a new love, exploded. "The heavens are angry," he raged, "and you say it has nothing to do with you? Are we at war? Are there traitors at court? Am I a tyrant? No. So if not you and your palace, where is the problem?" Empress Shu fell silent, finally realizing her peril. But it was too late. Because another beauty from the Zhao family had entered the palace. Zhao Feiyan's childhood was tragic. Her father was a government slave. When she was born, her parents abandoned her to die. She survived for 3 days outdoors before they took her back. In such a family, her path was set. Her every action was driven by a simple, desperate need, survival. But her sister was different. After entering the palace, Feiyan quickly recommended her younger sister, Zhao Hede. If Feiyan's beauty was a performance born of the will to survive, Hede's was a weapon of pure, predatory desire. The emperor was instantly conquered by her. The sisters, now armed with the emperor's absolute infatuation, were ready to strike. Shortly after Empress Chu was publicly shamed, her sister, seeking revenge, was caught performing witchcraft curses against pregnant consorts and the Grand Marshal Wang Feng. She was executed. The Zhao sisters seized the opportunity, falsely accusing Empress Chu and other consorts of being involved. A purge swept through the harem. Empress Chu was deposed. The consort Ban Jiayu, to prove her innocence, retired to a remote palace to serve the Empress Dowager Wang Zhengjun. The Zhao sisters had won. Feiyan now reached for the ultimate prize, the throne of the Empress. But Wang Zhengjun, having secured her family's power at court, now turned her attention to the mess her son had made of the palace. She flew into a rage, banished the male favorite Zhang Fang, and demanded to know why, after so many years, her son still had no heir. In this climate, who would dare to propose making a dancing girl from Han and the Empress? Someone did. Chunyu Zhang, another of the emperor's cousins, and another of his male lovers. Playing on his connection to the Empress Dowager, he shuttled between the two women, flattering, pleading, and promising. Finally, Wang Zhengjun relented. And so, in 16 BC, Emperor Cheng first ennobled Zhao Feiyan's slave father, retroactively erasing her lowly origins. Then he made Feiyan the empress, and her sister Heda the supreme consort Zhao Yi. Did the Zhao sisters finally stop? No. Perhaps their origins had filled them with a deep-seated insecurity that now twisted into a monstrous pathology. First, they indulged in unimaginable luxury. The palace built for Heda was a monument to decadence, with a red courtyard, walls of gold and jade, and steps of white marble. Second, they ruthlessly eliminated all rivals. It was said the sisters used a musk-based perfume to maintain their figures, which rendered them infertile. But they would not allow any other woman to succeed where they had failed. Zhao Heda, in particular, used every weapon in her arsenal, tears, tantrums, seduction, to keep the emperor to herself. And she enforced a brutal policy. Any child born in the palace, boy or girl, was to be murdered. It was then that the rhyme began to echo through the streets. The swallow flies in, pecks the imperial son. The imperial son dies. The histories say that many tried to warn the Empress Dowager, but the emperor and the Zhao sisters formed a wall of silence. The horrific news never reached her. Perhaps Wang Zhengjun truly was unaware. The Zhao sisters had no powerful male relatives, so their reign of terror was confined to the palace. At court, her own house of Wang remained supreme. But soon the political winds shifted again. Emperor Cheng, now aging, was finally forced to confront the fact that he would die without an heir. He had to choose a successor from the sons of his two brothers. In 9 BC, consort Fu, who had been exiled years earlier, returned to the capital with her grandson, the new king of a small fiefdom. With vast sums of money and a performance of profound humility, she won over the Zhao sisters and the current grand marshal from the Wang clan. They all praised her grandson to the emperor, and he was named the new crown prince. The very next year, Emperor Cheng, in the prime of his life, died suddenly. He died in the bedchamber of Zhao Hede. From a modern perspective, it was likely a stroke, perhaps from overexcitement. The young crown prince became Emperor Ai. Zhao Hede, now the prime suspect, was interrogated by the furious Empress Dowager Wang Zhengjun. She committed suicide. But the drama was far from over. In a twisted turn of fate, while one sister was dead, the other, Zhao Feiyan, was promoted from Empress to Empress Dowager. And at that critical moment, the long-suppressed case of the murdered imperial sons finally exploded into public view. A high-ranking investigator presented a devastating report filled with witness testimony, proving that Zhao Hede had murdered at least 2 royal infants, and that she had done so with the emperor's consent, sometimes even in his presence. The court was stunned. The investigator demanded that while the main culprit was dead, her family should not be allowed to retain their noble status. Panicked, Zhao Feiyan ran for cover to the only person who could protect her, consort Fu, who was now the Grand Empress Dowager Fu. What followed was a farce unparalleled in Chinese history. At this moment, the empire effectively had 4 Empresses Dowager. The situation was so absurd that people could only distinguish them by the names of the palaces where they lived. First, there was Wang Zhengjun, mother of the late emperor and Emperor Ai's grandmother-in-law, who resided in the Palace of Enduring Trust, the Changxin Palace. Second, there was Grand Empress Dowager Fu, Emperor Ai's biological grandmother, who held court in the Palace of Eternal Trust, the Yongxin Palace. Third, there was Empress Dowager Ding, Emperor Ai's biological mother, who occupied the Palace of Central Peace, the Zhong'an Palace. And finally, there was Zhao Feiyan, Emperor Ai's nominal mother-in-law, who was known simply as the Empress Dowager. A war between the four women erupted. With Zhao Feiyan now allied with her, Grand Empress Dowager Fu held the upper hand. Emperor Ai first stripped Zhao Feiyan's relatives of their titles, but issued no further punishment. Then he launched a counterattack, accusing the investigator of treason for daring to question the late emperor's choices. If those infants had lived, the argument went, would the empire have been blessed with our brilliant new emperor? Clearly not, therefore you are the traitor. The investigator was exiled, and then Emperor Ai turned his sights on the power behind him. Who propped him up? He asked. Ah, the House of Wang. It seems a change of management is in order. With the backing of the three other dowagers, the young emperor purged the House of Wang from the court. Their leader, the Grand Marshal Wang Mang, was sent into exile. He likely would have been killed had he not staged his own masterful political drama, forcing his own son to commit suicide for a minor crime, thereby cementing his reputation as a living saint and making him politically untouchable. But the young emperor soon discovered a bitter truth. He had driven out the Wangs, only to be besieged by a new horde of imperial relatives. The House of Fu produced 6 marquises, 2 grand marshals, and over 10 other high officials. The House of Ding added another 2 marquises, 1 grand marshal, and more than 10 senior courtiers. Grand Empress Dowager Fu, finally avenged, began a campaign of terror against her old rivals. She had the late emperor's other favorite, consort Feng, falsely accused of witchcraft and driven to suicide. She then tried to move against Wang Zhengjun, but the old empress was too cautious and too well entrenched. So Fu resorted to public humiliation, calling Wang Zhengjun that old hag to her face. Finally, to cement her own power, Grand Empress Dowager Fu personally selected a new empress for her grandson, the chosen bride, the daughter of her own male first cousin. This meant that the new empress was, in terms of blood relation, Emperor Ai's cousin. If you were Emperor Ai facing such a grandmother, such a court, what could you do? To make matters worse, he was suffering from a progressive muscular atrophy. And so, the once promising young emperor sank into despair. He seemed to reject all women, terrified of the vipers in his own palace. He turned to a male favorite, Dong Xian, showering him with titles, even joking about giving him the empire. He was playing with fire, slapping the face of the entire imperial court. Just 6 years later, in 1 BC, Emperor Ai died. The day Emperor Ai died, the 70-year-old Grand Empress Dowager Wang Zhengjun moved with astonishing speed and decisiveness. She marched from her palace to the throne room and seized the imperial seal. She immediately recalled her nephew, Wang Mang, and restored him as Grand Marshal. The purge was swift and brutal. Dong Xian was investigated and committed suicide. Zhao Feiyan was investigated and committed suicide. The new Empress Fu was investigated and committed suicide. Grand Empress Dowager Fu and Empress Dowager Ding were already dead. But Wang Mang's vengeance was not finished. He declared they were traitors who did not deserve to be buried in the imperial cemetery. He had their tombs broken open, their coffins smashed, their burial mounds leveled, and planted thorns over the desecrated ground as a warning. As for the new emperor, Wang Zhengjun and Wang Mang chose an 8-year-old boy, the grandson of the late consort Feng. This was Emperor Ping, the last true emperor of the Western Han Dynasty. And his mother's family, the House of Wei, was yet another powerful clan of imperial relatives. After Emperor Ping took the throne, Wang Mang, citing the chaos caused by the previous clans, forbade the new emperor's mother and her family from entering the capital. This tyrannical move sparked outrage, even from his own eldest son. The protest culminated in his opponents throwing dog's blood on his gate, an ancient curse. We will never know if it was the ancient curse or the politics of imperial relatives, 2 of the most volatile triggers in Han imperial history, that finally snapped the nerve of the man who had so meticulously crafted his public mask of moral humility. But in that moment, he exploded. He unleashed a massacre. From imperial princesses, to feudal kings, to his own eldest son, and of course, the entire House of Wei. Thousands were executed. Only the emperor's mother was left alive. After exterminating the new emperor's maternal clan, Wang Mang began to build his own. When the boy emperor was 12, Wang Mang announced that he would marry his own daughter to him to make her the new empress. Wang Zhengjun, who had seen enough, vehemently objected. But Wang Mang, now all-powerful, ignored her. His daughter became the new Empress Wang. Counting from the mother of the great Emperor Wu, she was the 5th Empress Wang of the 200-year-old dynasty, and also the last. A year later, the young Emperor Ping died suddenly. The new Empress Wang became the new Empress Dowager. 2 years later, in 9 AD, amidst a tidal wave of public disgust for the Han imperial house and overwhelming praise for him, Wang Mang was pushed onto the dragon throne. The Xin, or New, dynasty was founded. The Han Empire was dead. Wang Mang sent an envoy to his aunt, Wang Zhengjun, to demand the imperial seal. She cursed him and his house to ruin, then threw the jade seal to the ground, chipping a corner. From then on, she ignored his new titles and robes, continuing to dress in the black sable of the Han court and celebrating the old Han festivals. 5 years later, in 13 AD, the 84-year-old Wang Zhengjun died. 10 years after that, in 23 AD, the capital was overrun by rebels. Wang Mang was killed by an enraged mob, and the 200-year-old palace was burned to the ground. And Wang Mang's daughter, the last Empress Dowager of the Han Dynasty, threw herself into the flames, crying, "How can I ever face the men of the House of Han?" This is a story about desire. Desire is innate. It neither waxes nor wanes. Some conquer it, some are defeated by it, and some wield it as a weapon. And this is a story about a price. You take, you gain. You plant seeds of hope or of hatred. You find happiness or pleasure. But in truth, everything in destiny has a price tag, already marked by the gods, and some prices are far, far greater than life itself.